Ambrose, and I want to talk to you about Props 30 and 38. You cannot have one without the other this year. There's an openly secret war between Prop 30 and 38. Both propositions increase taxes, and that's where the problems begin. Regarding Prop 30, Proposition 30, a sales and income tax increase initiative, is on the November 6th ballot as an initiated constitutional amendment. Governor Brown is leading the charge for Proposition 30, which is a merger of two previously competing initiatives, the Millionaire's Tax and Brown's first tax increase proposal. Governor Brown has written Prop 30 so that K-12 schools and higher education would take the full $6 billion hit if the initiative fails, essentially holding education for ransom. Having chosen that strategy, the campaign has yet to make vividly clear the impact on students and their futures of losing the equivalent of 3 weeks of the school year in K-12, as well as the impact of higher tuition and decimated programs in community colleges and state universities. Arguments presented in favor of Proposition 30 include, quote, "Without Prop 30, our schools and colleges face an additional $6 billion in devastating cuts this year," end quote. It is the only measure that establishes a guarantee for public safety funding in our state's constitution, where it can't be touched without voter approval. Prop 30 keeps cops on the streets. It balances our budget and helps pay down California's debt. It is a critical step in stopping the budget shortfalls that plague California. Quote, "To protect schools and safety, Prop 30 temporarily increases personal income taxes on the highest earners and establishes the sales tax rate lower than it was last year. Prop 30's taxes are temporary, balanced, and necessary to protect schools and safety," end quote. Only the very highest earners will pay more for 7 years. The sales tax provision will be in effect for 4 years. But the arguments in opposition to Proposition 30 include, there is no guarantee in the way it is written that the money would be used for schools. Thus, it is a $50 million shell game. To buttress this argument, opponents quote the California School Boards Association, which in May of 2012 said, "The governor's initiative does not provide new funding for schools. Nothing in Prop 30 reforms our education system to cut waste, eliminate bureaucracy, or cut administrative overhead. Instead of supporting education, the new tax money raised by Prop 30 will really go to backfill the insolvent teachers' pension fund." The governor, politicians, and special interests behind Prop 30 threaten voters. They say vote for our massive tax increase or we'll put it out on schools. But at the same time, they refuse to reform the education or pension systems to save money. Politicians would rather raise taxes instead of streamlining thousands of state-funded programs. Look at what they just did. Politicians authorized nearly $5 billion in California bonds for the bullet train to nowhere, costing taxpayers $380 million per year. If Prop 30 passes, Governor Brown claims to reduce the debt that the state owes its schools through late payments, so that schools will then have more revenue in future years. That's Prop 30. Now on to Prop 38. Supporters of Proposition 38 and Molly Munger, who is the primary advocate of this measure, refer to it as the Our Children, Our Future, Local Schools and Early Education Investment Act. Prop 38 is a 12-year temporary tax. If enacted, it will increase state income tax rates for most Californians starting at $7,316 for income per year, resulting in an increased revenue to the state of about $10 billion a year. The state income tax increase would end after 12 years unless voters reauthorize it, and earmark most of the new revenue of $10 billion for public school districts and early childhood development programs. The money is to be placed in a separate trust fund that can only be spent as authorized by the provisions of the Act. The governor and legislature are prohibited from using it. For the first time, school boards are required to provide clear, accurate budgets for each school site. They must explain how every expenditure will improve educational outcomes at the school site and publicly disclose whether those goals have been met. The measure limits what schools can spend from these new funds on administrative costs to no more than 1%, and says schools may not use these new funds to increase salaries and benefits. The initiative contains tough, effective accountability provisions that require oversight, audits, and public disclosure. However, the Cal Chamber Board of Directors voted to oppose the measure because it heavily impacts small businesses, which are the source of most new jobs, by imposing steep new taxes. The Munger Initiative is a virtually permanent tax increase that would make California's top marginal income tax rate the highest in the country. This proposal would further hurt California's competitiveness and discourage capital formation and business growth. Approximately 3.8 million California small businesses pay individual taxes on their earnings rather than corporate taxes. Consequently, small businesses will be devastated by these higher taxes, even businesses making as little as $30,000 to $40,000 per year. Instead of creating jobs and improving the economy, Prop 38 will force family businesses to cut jobs, move out of state, or even close. If they can stay in business, they'll raise their prices to pay the higher taxes, which will ultimately be passed on to consumers. Under Prop 38, there are no requirements to improve school performance or get rid of the bad teachers. Too much money will continue to be spent on administration, consultants, pensions, benefits, and overhead, and too little will be spent in the classroom. Currently, 24% of California students don't graduate from high school. Prop 38 pours more money into a system that is failing our kids without requiring improvements in outcomes for students. This measure cannot be changed for 12 years, even for fraud or waste, without another vote. Now to summarize. Just this past June, Governor Brown signed Senate Bill 1039, a bill that changed the way that ballot propositions are numbered and ordered on the ballot. The change benefits Prop 30 because it says that all proposed constitutional amendments will appear first on the ballot before any proposed initiated state statutes. The Prop 38 measure is a proposed state statute, and as a result of this new legislation, Prop 38 measure appears well after Prop 30. Both propositions are viewed by many pundits and political operatives in California as competing with each other. Prop 38 would raise the income tax rate on most Californians, whereas Prop 30 targets only those making more than $250,000 a year. Interestingly, the state constitution provides that when two measures conflict, the one with the most votes prevails. In addition, sections in both Props 30 and 38 explicitly bar the other from taking effect. Even if you vote for both, only one can win. Should both propositions pass, Californians may well see litigation extending into the next decade. Moreover, this got interesting. Governor Brown opposes Prop 38, while Molly Munger opposes Prop 30. So I would strongly urge you to vote no on both propositions, as the schools will not benefit from either proposition. While Prop 38 has tighter restrictions regarding where new taxes will be spent, small businesses are in jeopardy. Taxes from Prop 30 will be taken away from the schools and put into the general fund to be spent in any fashion Club Med in Sacramento wants it. Both propositions stink.